Hannukah, remembering the ongoing war between light and darkness. The word Hannukah is the Hebrew word that means dedication. The root word from which it comes is the word Hannukah, which means to teach. So what is it exactly that Hannukah is dedicating? And what is Hannukah trying to teach? When we look back to the 400-year intertestamental period falling between the writings of the prophet Malachi and the birth of the heralding prophet John the Baptist, we find this time period labeled by many people as the silent years, erroneously so called simply because Elohim gave no new revelation to his people during this time. There were no new prophets, visions, or angelic visits. But this so-called period of prophetic silence did not in any way mean that Elohim had forgotten his people or was not actively working on behalf of his people. To the contrary, Bible prophecy was being actively fulfilled during this time period, and the stage of history was being purposely set for the soon coming arrival of the promised Messiah. Even though Hannukah is not mentioned specifically by name and was not instituted until after the Old Testament was completed, the events of Hannukah were clearly prophesied centuries beforehand by the prophet Daniel. As we all know, Daniel was taken into captivity to Babylon while a teenager around 607 BC. And now, in his 70s, Daniel was granted visions of the future coming events in the third year of the reign of Belshazzar, ruler of the Babylonian Empire, approximately 545 BC. In Daniel chapter 8, we find the record of one of several visions that Elohim gave to Daniel. This vision in particular was of a ram with two horns, the Medo-Persian Empire, exuding great power and exercising extensive dominion in the world, to the point that no other beasts, earthly kingdoms, were able to stand before it. Then, Daniel saw a he-goat, representing the Macedonian Greek Empire, appear in a vision that had a single conspicuous horn, representing Alexander the Great, coming out of the west, Macedonia, and moving so quickly that its feet did not touch the ground. The he-goat, the Greek Macedonians, came up to the ram, the Medo-Persians, that had two horns, which Daniel had seen standing in front of the canal, and it rushed at him, the ram, in his mighty wrath. Daniel then saw him, the he-goat, come up beside the ram, and he was enraged at him, and he struck the ram and shattered his two horns, and the ram had no strength to withstand him. So he, the he-goat, hurled him, the ram, to the ground and trampled on him, and there was none to rescue the ram from his power. Then Daniel saw the male goat, Greece, magnifying himself exceedingly. But as soon as he was mighty, the large horn, Alexander, was broken, and in its place there came up four conspicuous horns toward the four winds. History has shown us that these four horns were Alexander's faithful generals that divided the empire up between them after Alexander's death. The vision in Daniel chapter 8 continues to tell us that out of one of the horns, the Seleucid kingdom, came forth a rather small horn which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the beautiful land. It grew up to the host of heaven and caused some of the host and some of the stars to fall to the earth, and it trampled them down. And on account of transgression, the host was given over to the horn, along with the regular sacrifice. And it would fling truth to the ground, and it would practice and perform, and would prosper. History has now confirmed to us that 400 years after Daniel recorded his visions, the world stage that the Hannukah story was to be played out upon was now set as foretold. And later in Daniel chapter 11, we have Daniel recording again of this prophesied event, a coming persecution of Elohim's faithful people and of the courage they would be exhibiting during this time. Daniel 11:32 and 33 says, "But the people who know Elohim shall be strong and do great exploits, and those of the people who understand shall instruct many. Yet for many days they shall fall by sword and flame, by captivity and plundering." Even though the beginning of Hannukah as a holiday is not described in the Bible, It is still one of the most historically documented of all Jewish holidays, the earliest historical record of Hanukkah being found in the Talmud and the books of 1st and 2nd Maccabees. Hanukkah is an annual festival of the Jews that begins on the evening of the 25th of Kislev, falling somewhere between November and December. And it is celebrated for 8 successive days to remember the miraculous military victories over superior Seleucid forces and to honor the restoration of divine worship in the temple after it had been defiled by heathens. It is a commemoration and celebration of the moral and military victory of a few brave people who by faith clung to their obedience to Elohim, despite an overwhelming majority of their own people who chose to align themselves with the conquering power of a contemporary secular culture. This theme of the righteous few defying the immoral majority is a principle that we find existing throughout the Bible. It is both a test and the price of obedience that Elohim many times allows his people to experience. What exactly is being remembered, commemorated, and celebrated on Hanukkah? A military victory? A spiritual victory? A miracle? All of the above? Let's start by looking at the historical account first. Artfully presented in a video produced by the creator of the exceptionally informative YouTube channel, Israel My Channel. I recommend you go to that channel, that you subscribe to it and support him. His work is tremendous.
One of the greatest Jewish stories begins here, in the city of Modin. Modin is an Israeli city located in central Israel, about 35 kilometers southeast of Tel Aviv and 30 kilometers west of Jerusalem. The modern city was named after ancient Jewish town of Modin, which existed in the same area. Modin was the place of origin of the Maccabees, the Jewish rebels who freed Judea from the rule of the Seleucid Empire and established the Hasmonean dynasty. The events of this heroic fight are commemorated by the holiday of Hannukah. I am sure that you have heard about Hannukah. Since the Jewish people around the world will celebrate the holiday of Hannukah at the end of November, I thought it would be good to share what this feast is really about. This episode will also be a continuation of the series on the history of Jerusalem. In my last episode, number 11, entitled Antiochus IV Epiphanes, a type of the Antichrist, I gave some background to the events we will discuss today. So, if you haven't seen that episode, I highly recommend that you do. I will put a link in the description of this episode and the link to the whole series. Also, please do not forget to subscribe and hit that notification button to be informed about new episodes on Israel My Channel. So let's begin our journey in time. For centuries, the Jewish people have suffered persecution, torture, and murder. Yet, somehow this tiny nation continues to exist and make a significant impact worldwide. Hannukah is a perfect example of Jewish perseverance in the face of trouble. But it is much more than that. It is also a special message to all people that light is stronger than darkness, that even in the darkest days of Jewish history, a spark was ignited and brought freedom and hope. No matter how dark it is, darkness can never overcome light. And it was dark, no question about it. In the 2nd century BC, the evil Seleucid ruler Antiochus IV tried to assimilate the Jewish people into Greek culture and destroy their identity. He forbade the circumcision and Torah studies, desecrated the temple in Jerusalem by sacrificing a pig on the altar, dedicated the temple to Zeus, and murdered anyone who did not conform. Some estimate he killed more than 100,000 Jewish people. He was so wicked and depraved that he is considered a type of the future anti-Messiah in the book of Daniel. Once again, I remind you, I give more information about Antiochus in episode 11. Still, I wanted to stress that Antiochus is a really bad person who, because of his failed ambitions, picked the Jewish people to suffer his great anger. You may ask, what is the big deal and why the Jewish people could not just accept the requirements and save themselves? Many actually did, and even started to enjoy the Greek culture, which is so different from the Jewish worldview. Greek culture was extremely concentrated on humanism that glorified human pleasure and self-centered desires. Greeks had public baths and sports centers where people exposed themselves naked. They had many temples to various gods where people were worshipping a deity and indulging in immoral intercourse with priests and priestesses. Greeks had no dietary laws and would see Jewish laws of circumcision as barbaric. Despite many advantages that the Jewish people could receive from assimilation with the Greek culture, some hold fast to their Jewish identity and could not abandon their father's faith and God. The culminating point for Jewish rebellion against Greek culture and dominance in the region was 175 BC. This year, Antiochus IV Epiphanes became the Seleucid Basileus. The title Epiphanes, which he chose, meant manifested from God and gave an understanding of his high esteem of himself. Although, rightly so, he was secretly called by many people Epimanas, meaning madman. Antiochus IV appointed a Greek-loving culture Menelaus as high priest in Jerusalem. But during his failed campaign in Egypt to subdue the Ptolemaic kingdom, the Jewish people rebelled and replaced Menelaus with Jason as the high priest. Although Jason was not a perfect candidate and could be characterized as a Hellenist, the rebellion, compiled with a failed campaign in Egypt, angered the Seleucid king, who decided to expose all his frustration on the Jewish people. He stormed Jerusalem with his army, slayed Jason's supporters, and reinstated his puppet Menelaus as high priest. One of his generals, Apollonius, was left in charge of the city, who brought down the walls surrounding Jerusalem and built a great fortress called Acra on the hill of Ophel, which served as the Greek stronghold in the area. In addition to the appearance of a large fortress that reminded the Jewish people of Greek dominance in Jerusalem, Epiphanes decided it was time to root out the Jewish identity in Judea. He prohibited Jewish holidays in Jerusalem, circumcision, and converted the temple into a Greek worship center for the Greek god Zeus. To humiliate the Jewish people, pigs, the unholy animals, were sacrificed on the altars of the temple. These events were a dark time for the Jewish people, but they also brought a holy zeal that would begin a tremendous transformation. This transformation begins in the town of Modin in Judea, where the Jewish priest Mattathias and his 5 sons, one of whom became known as Judah the Maccabee, courageously stood up for the truth. In 167 BC, a Seleucid official arrived in Modin and demanded a sacrifice to the Greek gods. Mattathias refused, but quickly someone requested he would replace Mattathias in performing the sacrifice. The betrayal did not last long, as Mattathias grabbed his knife and killed his countrymen before he could finish the sacrifice. Mattathias, joined by his sons and loyal Jews, defeated the Greek officials and his soldiers. This was the beginning of a spectacular Jewish revolt known in history as the Maccabean Revolt, which derives from the third son of Matthias, Judah the Maccabees, a title from an Aramaic word Makkaba, meaning hammer. As time progressed, the Jewish army grew, and Antiochus himself was busy with the constant threat from the Parthian kingdom that threatened the eastern borders of his empire. Such circumstances allowed the guerrilla Jewish army to make significant victories in Wadi Harami, Bet Haroan, Emmaus, and Bet Zur. In 164 BC, the evil ruler Antiochus IV contracted a fatal disease, and his 10-year-old son, Antiochus V, inherited the empire. The unexpected events required much attention at the Seleucid capital, and therefore the campaign in Judea to subdue the rebellion is abandoned. Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the Jewish people, without its walls, is easily retaken by the Maccabees. The last stand of the Hellenists is the infamous Acra built by Apollonius. Under the leadership of the Hammer, Judah the Maccabee, the fortress is razed to the ground. Today, it is believed that the remains of this fortress were found on the Ophel next to the Temple Mount. After taking control of the temple, the statue to Zeus and all the objects remaining of the pagan worship are destroyed in the temple. One of Matthias' sons, Jonathan, is ordained as the new high priest of Jerusalem. Once again, the Jewish people could light the menorah in the temple, symbolizing that light is victorious over darkness. However, there was a problem. There was not enough holy oil to keep the menorah light for more than one day. It took several days to prepare new oil for the menorah. But then, a miracle happened. The fire of the menorah kept on going for 8 full days. Each day, the priests of the temple looked at the menorah and praised God that light was shining and they had enough time to prepare the holy oil. Today, this miracle event is symbolized by the Hannukah, an 8-armed menorah, commemorating God's provision for 8 days.
The principal source for the story of Hannukah is found in the Talmud. The great courage of the Hasmoneans are recounted in the scroll of the Hasmoneans and other chronicles, and has been the source of inspiration to the Jewish people throughout the past 22 centuries of exile, replete with cruel oppression. Yet the Talmud, in its discussion of Hannukah, does not focus on the obvious, extraordinary, and divinely assisted military victories. Traditionally, the explanation for this seeming slight of military dimension of the great miracles of those days has been that as great as the victories may have been, they were but a passing triumph. Instead, the Talmud points to the cleansing and rededication of the temple for worshiping Elohim, and to the miracle of the single cruse of oil that fueled the menorah for 8 days in the temple, as the faithful followers of Elohim waited for more oil to be purified and sanctified. This is the essence of the festival of Hannukah. In other words, the festival of lights. The message? Military campaigns and victories are important, but nothing can ever diminish the purity of the event, of the 1 day's supply of oil burning for 8 days. Facing larger, highly trained, and more well-equipped military forces, a small group of Hasmonean rebels under the leadership of Judas Maccabee regained control of Jerusalem and the temple, and then began the task of cleansing and purifying it. The altar, which had been defiled by the sacrifice of a pig upon it, was torn down and rebuilt. Taking unhewn stones, as the law commands, they built a new altar on the model of the previous one. They rebuilt the temple, restored its interior. All new vessels were crafted, and the temple courts were consecrated. They renewed the sacred vessels and the lampstand, and brought the altar of incense and the table of showbread into the temple. When the Jews removed the idols from the temple that had been placed in the holy place by Antiochus, with the aid and approval of the unfaithful priest of Elohim, they found only 1 small cruse of consecrated oil, with only enough oil for 1 day to light their holy lamps. They decided to light the menorah, even with the small amount of oil. To everyone's amazement, the menorah miraculously burned brightly for 8 days until new oil was available. Then they burnt incense on the altar, decorated the front of the temple with golden wreaths and ornamental shields, renewed the gates and the priests' rooms, and fitted them with doors. And when they had put the bread of the presence on the table and hung the curtains, all their work was completed. And then the temple was then rededicated to Elohim with festivities that lasted 8 days. The congregation of Israel decreed that the rededication of the altar should be observed with joy and gladness at the same season each year. The The Hanukkah celebration centers around a 9-branched menorah. Why a 9-branched menorah instead of a 7-branched menorah? The Hanukkah menorah has 8 branches to commemorate each of the 8 days of Hanukkah, and the 9th branch, the shamash candle, is used to light the other 8 branches. The shamash candle is also known as the servant candle. It is the first candle lit every night and then becomes the source by which the remaining candles are to be lit from. The shamash candle, in effect, is sacrificed so that the others may shine. In this symbol we find a wonderful parallel to the servanthood of our Messiah, who gave himself so that others might live. In the traditional Jewish home, it is customary to recite portions of Scripture before lighting the candles each night. What follows are simply my preferred Scripture verses to use when lighting the candles to remember and honor Hanukkah. Lighting of the shamash candle. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. He was in the beginning with Elohim. All came through him, and without him not even one came to be that came to be. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. He is the true light, which enlightens every man coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, yet the world did not know him. He came unto his own, and his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave authority to become children of Elohim, to those believing in his name, who were not born of blood, nor of the desire of flesh, nor of the desire of men, but of Elohim. 1. The people sitting in the darkness saw a great light, and to those sitting in the region in the shadow of death, light sprang up to them. And Jesus said, I am the light of the world. He that follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. Day 2. But no one having lit a lamp places it in secret or under a grain measure, but on a lampstand, so that the ones entering may see the light. The lamp of the body is the eye. When your eye is sound, also your body is light. But when your eye is evil, also your body is dark. Watch then, that the light in you is not darkness. Day 3. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. I came into this world for judgment, that the ones who do not see may see, and they who see may become blind. Yet a little while the light is with you. Walk while you have the light, that darkness not overtake you. The one walking in darkness does not know where he is going. While you have the light, believe into the light, that you may become sons of the light. Day 4. For Elohim so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that everyone believing into him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For Elohim did not send his Son into the world that he may judge the world, but that the world might be saved through him. The one believing into him is not judged, but the one not believing has already been judged, for he has not believed into the name of the only begotten Son of Elohim. And this is the judgment, that light is come into the world, and the men loved darkness more than the light, for their works were evil. For everyone practicing wickedness hates the light and does not come to the light, that his works may not be exposed. But the one doing the truth comes to the light, that his works may be revealed, that they have been worked in Elohim. Day 5. And this is the message which we have heard from him, and we announce to you. Elohim is light, and no darkness is in him, none. If we say that we have fellowship with him and we walk in darkness, we lie, and we are not practicing the truth. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another. And the blood of Yeshua HaMashiach cleanses us all from sin. But you are an elect race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people of Elohim's own possession, so that you may openly speak of the virtues of the one who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. He having saved us and having called us with a holy calling, not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace, given in Mashiach Yeshua before eternal times, but now revealed through the appearance of our Savior Yeshua HaMashiach, making death of no effect and bringing life and incorruption to light through the gospel. And And the city had no need of the sun nor of the moon that they might shine in it, for the glory of Elohim illuminated it. Even its lamp is the Lamb. And the nations of the ones saved will walk in its light, and the kings of the earth bring their glory into it. Day 8. And I heard behind me a great voice, as of a trumpet, saying, I am the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. And I turned to see the voice which spoke with me. And turning, I saw 7 golden lampstands, and in the midst of the 7 lampstands, one like the Son of Man, having been clothed to the feet, and having been girded with a golden girdle at the breasts. And the hairs of his head were white as wool, as snow, and his eyes as a flame of fire, and his feet like burnished metal having been fired in a furnace, and his voice as of a sound of many waters, and having in his right hand 7 stars, and a sharp 2-edged sword proceeding out of his mouth, and his face shining as the sun in its power. And the Spirit and the bride say, Come. We light the menorah as a symbol of our willingness to lift ourselves up to Elohim so that he may ignite the flame in our souls with a spark that cannot be extinguished, a flame that will burn not for 8 days, but for eternity. The menorah is placed in the windows to be visible to those passing by, just as our inner light must be placed in the windows of the world, so that our inner light might shine against the darkness of evil and indifference. The menorah reminds us of the miracle that no matter how dark life may be, there remains a source of light to those who choose to know their Elohim. The menorah reminds us that the light in our souls reflects and refracts the light of the one who is the light. This light can accompany us on our way and illuminate the darkest path. We need not walk through life's path stumbling over obstacles as though we were blind. The plague of darkness is all around us, but the light is there for those who continue to fan it to a flame. Hannukah is a reminder to us of courageous and persevering faith in Elohim. Many were martyred, not accepting deliverance that they might obtain a better resurrection. Others did great exploits for their Elohim. This is the quality that Elohim is looking for in the sons and daughters of Adam today. He is pleased with those who steadfastly put their trust in him, for without faith it is impossible to please him. But Hannukah is also a reminder of the faithfulness of Elohim. The Satan, through Antiochus Epiphanes, had planned to destroy Elohim's word and his people through assimilation and annihilation. Had he been successful, there would have been no more Jewish people, no Messiah to come, and more importantly, no Calvary. Men and women would be forever lost in sin without hope. So indeed, a great miracle did happen there. Not so much the cruse of oil, but rather Elohim's faithfulness to his people and to his messianic promise. That is what gives true significance to Hannukah today. So when you look at a menorah on Hannukah, we should be seeing a symbol of faith, a symbol of victory, a symbol of choice, a symbol of truth, a symbol of righteousness, a symbol of obedience, a symbol of Elohim's faithfulness, a symbol of Elohim's deliverance. As I said in the beginning, Hannukah, remembering the ongoing war between light and darkness and our place in it.